New Thought Radio, music from all your favorite New Thought artists. From Jamie Lula, Karen Drucker, Gary Lynn Floyd, Ricky Byers, Daniel Nahmod, Eddie Watkins Jr., and many, many more. 24/7 New Thought Radio. Positively inspiring.
Greetings, beloved. How are you? I am so happy you're here with us again today. Reverend Michelle Wadleigh, Rev Jersey Girl on the Jersey Girl Wisdom Show. And I'm so happy that you're here with us here today. We continue this month with powerful, beautiful, and women in leadership, especially in spiritual leadership. And today is especially meaningful for me because one of my oldest friends is here, and her name is Rev Jude Denning from Unity of Stuart. And so I invite her into the studio, and I'm so happy that you all get to meet her. Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
How's the sound? Because I got very loud. I found earbuds. Are we okay with the sound?
I'm good with the sound.
Okay, good. And hopefully my producer gives me a thumbs up. That would be great. So good. This is really fun. And nobody knows who we are, but we could sit here all day long and tell stories. Now, we're not going to, because some of them are inappropriate for public listening. And I don't mean because they were so horrific, but we have children and grandchildren. So, you have to use discretion about some of the errors we've made in life that cause us to be brilliant, but still sometimes there's stepping stones that, were interesting. So how's life down in Unity of Stuart? Let's go there first.
Oh, life is good. Because of the pandemic, I've been virtual. We haven't been in person in church since last year. And so we're doing pretty well, actually, all things considered. We come to church every Sunday and broadcast the lesson live on Facebook and YouTube, and it's all going well.
Beautiful, good. Now, one of the things that's interesting, Jude and I, we were friends since high school. So I just want to say that since 13. So I won't tell you how many decades that is. But the interesting thing is that at one point in our lives, unbeknownst to each other, we both started to seek out spiritual food. And what happened was I went in the direction of what was then religious science, now Centers for Spiritual Living. And Jude went in the direction of Unity. And it wasn't until we went out and then came back at one point and started chatting with each other that we found out we were both on a religious spiritual path. And it was fascinating. Do you remember that time? Do you remember when that happened?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I don't remember what our age was, but I think it speaks to a time when I think there's a time in everyone's life where they need more than just, I don't know, where they need more.
So I know exactly when it was for me. I was I have two older daughters, and when they were 11 and 7, I was divorcing from their father. Actually, that's not entirely true. We were separating, and I needed something. So I lived in a rural community in northwestern New Jersey, and I was raised Catholic. And I began to look, and Michelle and I were in an organization when we were very young called Planned Happiness, which you may, people who are watching may know that you have restarted that. And from when I moved away from Planned Happiness, I started looking for something while I was separating from my first husband. And I looked in the phone book. And I looked in the phone book, and and I had heard about Unity, and I had thought about Unitarian churches. And so there was a Unity and a Unitarian church. It was the summer, it was August, and the Unitarian church was closed for the summer because it was so small. And there was a Unity, there was a Unity group not too far from my home. And I walked in the front door and never looked back. So there was no religious science center at all. But who knows what might have happened had I found the religious science center then. But that's how I walked into Unity. So it was many years ago.
Yeah. It's funny because I could say I walked in and never looked back, but I did. The first teacher that I engaged didn't capture my heart and attention. So I was there for a short time, left, and then came back when another teacher showed up, and then that's when I didn't turn back. But so right now, because of this being Women's History Month, there's a lot of programming on television, and I think Jude, you'll admit, along with me, having a month dedicated to women is ridiculous, just as having a month dedicated to Black history is ridiculous.
Yeah,
they're both ridiculous. However, so I'm watching now the series, this British series on women in history and the suffragette movement. And just, indulging a little bit of history. And I know for me that my history, I came up out of nothing that would tell me I'd be launched into this. And so, and I think you can tell whatever part of that, your story, you want or not. But I think you might say the same thing, that there was no early evidence that you would be here as the spiritual leader of a community.
None. I'll tell you a funny story about that. Okay. I was, when my older daughters were young, one of them was swimming. And I had been in the program. Unity teaching has something called a licensed Unity teacher, which is somewhat akin to a practitioner in religious science. And I had become a licensed Unity teacher, and I was a lay leader. I was speaking a little bit at churches, my particular home church on Sundays. And I ran into someone from high school at one of the swim meets. And I'm not going to mention his name. He's a sweet, sweet guy. And we were talking and catching up. And so he said, "So what are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'm studying to become a minister in this church, northwestern New Jersey." And he said, "Ha!" Could not believe that was a path that I had decided to take. I said, "Yeah." So life is really interesting, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah. I can remember. I didn't have that story, but I had my yummy friend Jessa, who were neighbors in Florham Park when I lived there for 30 years, and we're still good friends for almost 40 years that we're friends. And what happened was her husband loved to tease me because I was a little bit of a screw up. I admit I was a little bit of a screw up. And yet I was embracing life and moving along. And I can remember when I told him announced that I was on the path to ministry. Oh my God, I was never going to hear the end of it. And that continued, and I was fine. I loved them dearly. I didn't take it personally, and I was pretty amused by it, to be honest. Yeah. And that stayed like that until when his mother passed away. They asked me to facilitate a memorial. And I could feel it now. I can remember. It was so sacred
Hmm.
and so precious, and they all felt so served. No one in that family ever made fun of me again.
Yeah, yeah,
You
that's
know,
sweet. That's sweet.
it was, yeah. And so tell me, from the position that you serve, Judy, what's the thing that matters most to you? What do you want to impact the most with life in the world beyond your walls?
So I thought you were going to ask me what's most important to me in ministry. But this would be starts within, I think, is my own spiritual integrity. That's what matters most to me in doing this work that I do as a leader in Unity, as a spiritual leader in the world, really, and in my family. That it's the fact that I'm onto myself. That's the most important thing to me, is that I am onto myself. Go ahead.
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay,
agreeing.
okay.
I just love the way you say you. I just love the way you verbalize that.
Yeah, that emotional and spiritual maturity, but it's really being aware of what makes me tick and what ticks me off, and then dealing with that from that level of being centered and balanced. So being that role model in my own ministry, in the ministry that I serve, is the biggest thing for me, that I
Yeah.
just know how to manage myself.
Yeah.
And then, and further out into the world, it's really, in Unity, we have a saying that it's one thought at a time, as maybe you do in religious science. Life changes one thought at a time, one person at a time. And I feel like that has kept us small in a lot of ways, that there's not a big vision to change the world. And I know some people would say, yes, there's a big vision. And so since last year and George Floyd is when I took my head out of the sand. I was one of those people who would say that, it's not even that I would say, is that I wasn't paying that much attention to what was going on in the Black community. And I was activated when specifically George Floyd. And so my mission now has been to keep talking about Black lives, to keep talking about brown and Black people. And that's been where my attention has been geared in my teaching and in my book classes. I've done a lot of book studies. So that's important to me, for marginalized people, especially people with Black and brown skin.
Beautiful. And I want to talk more about that. I just want to take one quick moment to support this radio station, as I do each week, and just say to you, please, if this show has value, please, even now as you're listening, go on to the site, go on to the New Thought Media New Thought Media Network, and donate. Donate something now. Put them in your monthly giving. But please make sure that this radio station benefits from your generosity for many reasons. Part of it is so that because we give voice to people who don't always have an opportunity to be heard by the bigger crowds. So I please appreciate this station. And I'll tell you, I do. They are on my monthly giving list because I so appreciate what they are doing in the world. So I just encourage all of you to do the same. So, Judy, thanks for bringing that up. I have been on my side of that this story. My community has had a lot of diversity from the very beginning. You know that over the years you've come and you visited, and so you were aware that we had a lot of diversity. And the one thing that was really obvious to me, that I couldn't say I love the people in my community and not wake up to what was going on behind the scenes. And so that happened for people of color in my community. At one point we had a large Hispanic contingency, and we have a nice gay population. And even when the Pulse nightclub, when that horrific event happened, that was one of those moments too. And all of these events, and even when you start to know and you start to be aware, there's a part of that that for me is even more frustrating because I'm working, book study, my own education. I was part of the diversity commission for a few years with CSL. And there's times I feel, oh, it hasn't happened enough yet.
Yeah, I agree.
And when George Floyd happened, even though we had been doing a lot of programming or a lot of things in my community, that definitely was a new launch. And I wish that man never lost his life.
Yeah.
But since he did, I will do everything I can to make sure that we don't lose the lesson.
Yeah.
That we don't lose the lesson in what happened here. And communities might like that we're talking about this, and some communities might not like that we're talking about this. How is it received in your community, in your direct community?
It's been, it's really funny you should say that because, I've done 3 long-term book studies now about Black and brown people and marginalized people. And I had somebody in my last class said, "How is it going in church? You must be getting a lot of people who don't like what you're doing, that they want you to, do something else." And I said, not one person has emailed me or called me and said, "You shouldn't be doing this." Not one.
Beautiful.
And, our community, as many, well, we're in Florida, first of all. So I won't say what people call Florida, but it's something along the lines of God's waiting room. So I know, have you ever heard of that before?
No.
So a lot of people retire here. We have a lot of elder and wise elders, and so our community is a lot of people over 60, over 65 here, and they're good people. And if they're uncomfortable,
I'm glad you said that since we're on that doorstep.
Yeah, I know. So
we're on that doorstep.
So the thing about this, the thing about New Thought churches, I think, is that the people who walk into a New Thought church are predisposed to be open-minded, are predisposed to be told or to be taught that they don't know everything, and that there's a different way of thinking about things. So I haven't heard a thing about it, and I've had good attendance on everything that I've been doing.
Beautiful. We had we did a book study. I've done things separately, so my path is a little different than where the community has come. And in training practitioners, of course, I do a lot of I make sure I expose them to diversity, inclusion, conversation, and such, and have had the beloved Tracy Brown, master of the conversation, and Reverend Michelle Senegal, who's another resource for me, because I know I don't know. I want to make sure, and I check in with them as experts in the conversation to make sure that I'm going down the direction that really is supportive, and I'm not being blind. I don't want to be blind by my whiteness. Yeah. And pretty funny, us 2 white people talking about this. Anyway.
And it's up to us. It's up to us as white people to talk about it, right?
Yeah. So we had one of our gatherings Monday nights that we have this thing. It's called Healing the Divide, and we have about 50 people in there right now, and they're broken up into smaller groups with we call them family group leaders now. And the group that I happen to be in happens to be an all-white group, and I was moved to tears the other night because a number of the people in there haven't done this work till now.
Yeah.
And they were so sincere. And I heard them say things like, "I just didn't know." Now I know, and I have my Black friends who that could piss them off and they can lose patience, but you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so being part of that invitation to have people know, it does my heart good. And I'm hopeful that this continues to expand. Yeah. So I didn't know that was going to be the piece that came out of your mouth. Okay, so that's great. That's great. That's exciting to me. I think if someone asked me if I could only impact one thing, I think for me, I would go down the road of the sexual abuse and sex trafficking, because it's still not discussed enough as far as I'm concerned, and it's weird. There's all these nasty subjects that have this toxic feel, of which racism is one of them. Right. And yet now it's okay conversation and expected, but these other conversations are still not. I want to draw us back around for a moment
Sure.
to women. I don't know. There's this term. Do you know the term femicide?
I've heard the term femicide, but on the spot, I couldn't tell you what it means other than to kill women.
Yeah, there is a. I tripped upon it. I tripped upon it many years ago. It is something that is happening in South America, and my last little bit of research, it seemed like there was a lot of it happening in Mexico, where the women are being murdered and men are not being prosecuted, and almost celebrated for the act. And it takes my breath away. It takes my breath away. And that's the way I felt about, of course, that's also the way I felt about George Floyd. But you have daughters, right? So you're there to raise your daughters in this mindful way. I'm here to raise my sons as being conscious, although, I mean, all of our children right now are adults. But I do think it's upon people like you and I to impact and empower other women, to impact and empower their children.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is, it's quite a job. It's quite, it's hard. I tripped upon, because I do a lot of forgiveness work and do a lot of forgiveness training. And I found this article the other day about teaching children to forgive.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh yeah, we got to get to everybody earlier. So, okay, so that's a big journey for you, that's a big job. What else? What else about women in leadership would you like our audience to know? Like, how has it changed you? And there's a lot of hints you gave before, but how has it changed you?
So when I first came into ministry, I was a partner in ministry with a man, my then husband, and that relationship transformed, and I found myself leading Unity of Stuart by myself for the first time. And I had been in ministry in partnership for about 11, 12 years, and then it came to pass that I would be leading the church by myself. And there was someone else in my life who said to me, and it happened to be a man, who said to me, I don't think you can do it. Believe it? So and then I thought, I thought in that moment, I don't want to tell you what I thought in that moment. It wasn't ministerial or spiritual.
You can tell me
what I thought in that moment. But here's what I think about that if I see one role model, one woman who has done this work and is successful in doing this work and has love and balance and wisdom and awareness, then I can do it. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that I'm going to know everything. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to make mistakes, but dadgummit, I can do this. And so I set out to do what was mine to do. And so again, I'll go back to what I said, that the most important thing is me being onto myself and recognizing that I don't know everything, and that I don't have to be the first voice that speaks in a room, and that I can learn a lot from other people who have gifts that I don't have. To even be able to say, that's not my gift, I need help with that. And and young chippies around when we were, 16, 17 and in our 20s. And, I thought I knew a lot. And I was much more arrogant than I am now. I would like to say that I'm not arrogant at all, but it comes in for sure. And so I've learned how to temper my actions, my words, my thoughts about that. There's many voices in the room, and that what's mine to do is to listen and to distill those voices. And then if the decision is mine to make, then make it from that, knowing that I'm in integrity with all of that.
So thank you for all that. I want to say two things. One, I want to say an amusing thing, and that is, I didn't say this to everyone before, but Judy is another Jersey girl, okay? And we're stubborn. We are a stubborn people. And I didn't know how driven I was till one of my staff ministers years ago, Reverend Rich Folk, I'll mention his name, beloved man. He looked at me one time, he said, you're driven. I went, yeah. But there's not much that a Jersey, if you tell us we can't do something, basically, we're going to show you how to do it. So that's just the amusing thing I want to say.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to go back to when you refer to your youth, and this is not going to be, I'm not going to do tissue issues at the moment or try to do that. However, when you and I we haven't shared similar experiences, but we've had experiences that have had similar impact. So even though they didn't start the same, the way we ingested our life stories and some of the things that have happened to and around us, I know without question that what some might call a block were stepping stones, and I know that was true for you and true for me.
Yep.
So where we continue to share history is where we embrace what you said. We call well, you didn't say call yourself out. How did you word it?
I'm on to myself.
You're on to yourself. I like that. Where you're on to yourself and being so raw and so radical in your authenticity and in your honesty. And I mean, you too, I'm sure. I work with so many people, and people just afraid to be wrong. Yeah. And they're afraid to fail. And I'm so grateful that for some reason, I mean, I have failed so many times. I have failed publicly. I have tried things that like really bottomed out. And at one point you get over it. You go, yeah, okay. I'm divorced. Okay. Yeah, this happened. Okay. Yeah, I have a backache. Okay. I'm not perfect, right? And then you, if you're plugged into source, you recognize that source is what matters and not the human elements.
Yeah.
So, so for our listeners right now too, there is no experience that has happened to you, and I say that very consciously, that you can't benefit from.
Exactly right.
Right? It might be hard, it might be hurtful, but you can do it. You can still climb on top of it.
One of my foundational thoughts about all of that, when something comes up in my human experience, that my first reaction is to, I don't want this. Why is this happening? I want this to go away. Is the next thought is, this is for me. This is for me. This is for my spiritual growth. This is for, and basically that's it. Like I just stop right there. This is for my growth as a human being. This is for my growth in spirit. So it's up to me to find the blessing in that, or to find where that's for me. And so, yeah, that's the second thought. The first thought is, and the second thought is, and this is for me.
Yeah. Who am I becoming because of it? Who do I get to become because of it? And I almost want to tell stories just because there are so many, and even now there, I look around in my life and I know that there are people that really, that object to me. And either I can pay a lot of attention to that objection, or I can pay attention to what I'm bringing to the world.
Right.
And for me, it's about the focus. I'm always going to say, okay, let me go to the open door. Let me not try to figure out why that's not working when I can't, when in the truth of truth, I can't figure out what that is. So let me go to the open door. And I think a lot of times we have to prove something by trying to bang the door down. God knows. Again, your audience, you're looking at two women who are not here just because of education.
Right.
And we're not here because we wanted to just be spiritual. Basically, and this is what I tell people, especially ministers, and I'm sorry for any other minister listening if this doesn't reflect you. Most ministers I know have had the hardest lives, have sinned the most, have made the most mistakes. And that's our fodder. That's what we grow from.
Right.
It's not always pleasant to speak about, but there's not much somebody can tell me in the way of having me be shocked. And I'm sure you know the same thing.
So the thing for me is, maybe those watching or listening have heard the term wounded healer. And that might be kind of a trite phrase, but there is value and power in experience things in our lives so that our field of compassion opens up and our field of, energetic, like when a lot of people come to me and I can say, well, I understand that in a deep way. And that is valuable, that to have life experiences and to screw up and to make mistakes and say, well, it's a stepping stone, right? So I think it's really important to let people know what my vulnerabilities are. And as I teach and speak to people and to own up to that, to show my vulnerability. I'm not a perfect person. And if you would talk to anybody in my spiritual community, they'll say that they know that.
Right. I can remember years ago, somebody came into my community one day. This was years ago, and I guess my Seth, who's my third son, was around, and they knew I had two other children, and I looked at them and said, "What can I tell you? I like sex." Or I've said in front of the community, I'll say to them, I might be the only tattoo-bearing, tequila-shooting, sex-loving minister you're ever going to meet. And that, like, what else is there then, right? When we just, and the thing I think that makes you valuable and strong and a leader and an impactful leader is similar to what my values are too, and that is authenticity.
Yeah. Right.
Being willing to fall in front of the crowd.
Yeah.
And my heart breaks for the ministers who have a ministerial life and then a life.
Right.
And as long as that separation is kept, we're not inviting people to be in their humanity. And I know you agree with me that we can only be as spiritual as we are human.
Yeah.
Our humanity is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And I think that for me, that's the most authentic way to teach, and especially as women, when you introduced us, you said, oh, we've been friends since we were 13, and I'm not going to tell you how many decades that is. And I thought to myself, well, why? Because can I say it?
Oh, absolutely. I was more teasing, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, we're both 63, so we've known each other for 50 years. And
holy crap.
So it's 5 decades. And going back to the women in leadership part of that is, yes, I'm 63 and I carry a lot of wisdom for being 63. Yeah. I have a lot of experiences because I'm 63 and I have a lot of wisdom to share, quite frankly, which is another part of women in leadership that I find very important, is that to, not to put our own light under a bushel, and to, you've all heard this, especially, women, we're We're taught to nurture. We're taught to be in the background. We're taught to be kind. We're taught, and all that is important, but and not to the detriment of showing up in leadership and having a strong voice and speaking truth. And speaking truth to power is more important than that. And we can, and I've learned over the years to do that with kindness and with compassion. Don't always do it perfectly, and yet I'm still learning. So I think that's important for my leadership to value my own voice.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It matters deeply that we are able to. I love the feminine leadership. I love that part of me. I will always be a little bit of a mama bear. That will always, that will always be part of me. I'm always going to be the one who will want to hug you and put my hands on you when allowed, and to be in that space. But I got to tell you, behind the scenes, I'm aware of my power.
Yes.
And I do everything I can to continue to enrich and empower as many women around me as possible. And with my granddaughter now, I mean, I'm looking at her, and boy, am I affirming that feminine leadership in her, even at the age of 6.
Yeah.
Even at the age of 6. And anybody out there, mothers of children, mothers of daughters, embrace their power. That doesn't mean you have to like it, but you don't have to be threatened by it.
Yeah.
And I think there's some threatening that one can feel when we're not being totally awake. But I'm here to tell you, the more you embrace it, the more your daughter will rise and shine in the most beautiful way. And I say that as a mother of sons, because for me, I used to say the most responsible thing I could do for the world is to raise sons who are non-homophobic and non-racist. Now, that goes beyond what I understand now about, white fragility and all of that. But my job was to make sure I raised men that were respectful of women. And I can say, oh, okay, I've done a good job. Because that was my side of the equation. And you and I, another piece of history that we shared, we did come out of a similar community initially. And there was this woman, this precious little ex-Catholic woman who was in charge. And she was a tiny little thing. She was 4'11" on one side, 5'1" on the other, because she had a limp. And her name was Rita. And today, there's not many, I haven't been in touch with many people who are still around, but those of us who were exposed to this powerful, powerful woman from that age, and her community started in like 1957. People who were exposed to her are still touched by her. And that's what I want to do in the world. I want to know that when my life is over, someone says, okay, I learned to love myself because of Michelle.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And she called it raising the love quotient. Yeah. I want to keep raising that self-love quotient in myself and all others.
Yeah. I love that you brought up Rita again. And it just occurs to me quickly that she is part of the reason why I'm a spiritual leader right now. And you, Michelle Wadleigh, are part of the reason why I am a spiritual leader now. Not because you're a CSL minister, but because you were in that petri dish. We were in that petri dish together with Rita and all those. I remember on Wednesday nights around your kitchen table, talking about these ideas, and, you would cook for us and we would talk about these ideas. And that was the spark. And I remember you had this bathtub shower thing. I don't know, in that apartment in Jersey City. And the bathtub, there was a bathtub, but it was probably as wide as a shower. Do you remember that?
No, I'm waiting for you.
So I was in the bathtub and I was reading Wayne Dyer's book. I don't know, I guess, Real Magic. That was a book that changed my life, by the way. Nope. That's a book that changed my life, but it wasn't that book. It was the book by what's the book by Richard Bach, The Messiah?
Well, the Messiah, Jonathan Livingston
Yeah, but it was
Seagull.
that one about, that's not the full title, The Messiah, but I was reading that book in your bathtub.
The Reluctant
Messiah. And the one thing that jumped out for me about that book was thinking about perfection, and Richard saying to the Messiah, but it's not perfect. It has to be perfect, something along those lines. And the Messiah says to him, look at the sky. And he said, what do you see? He said, I see clouds moving, the sun's behind a cloud and all that. And he said, well, would you say that sky is always perfect or not, even though it's changing? And the answer, of course, is yes. And so going back to that, those people around your kitchen table and those conversations and those books were the fuel that brought me here, was the original fuel that brought me here. So in front of everybody, thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah.
God, I do remember. I mean, we were a community of people that had fun, but there was a lot of risk taking in the conversations.
A lot of deep work.
Illusions. Tony Hamilton. Hi, Tony. Was it illusions?
Yes, Tony. It was illusions. Thank you.
Bless your heart.
Yeah.
And I'll tell one more story, because I was 19. I had been exposed to Rita by that time for years as a little kid, annoying kid. But 19 was the very first time that I went to a retreat as a young adult. And I went only because my mother decided she didn't want to go. My father booked her, for her and the both of them to go. She decided not to go, so I went. And I can remember laying on the floor. They created this experience, and it was a multimedia thing. And they were blasting the music from Jonathan Livingston Seagull, the album that was out. Do you remember that? And it was this, and they were talking over it, and it was just, I remember being blown away by the concepts of Richard Bach at the time. He was very much an influence, and I wouldn't have thought about the lesson about perfection, but in some ways I can see that it was there was this a seed of hope and possibility that I got from him, and that was a beautiful time. So thank you. So you've been listening to Rev Jersey Girl, and on the Jersey Girl Wisdom Show with my very good friend Reverend Jude Denning from Unity of Stuart. From Unity of Stuart, and this has been a delight. I will continue this month speaking to women in leadership, and next week you're going to be here with somebody you know very well, which is Laura Topper, coming to us from England. I will be on her show on Monday in Cosmic Prayer. Love talking about prayer, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm so thankful for those of you who tune in. I'm thankful always for Diego as the producer of the show, and thank you, Judy. It's wow. It's 5 decades.
5 decades.
5 decades.
Yeah.
And I just quickly, I remember sitting behind you in the gym on the
bleachers?
On the bleachers, and I remember looking at you and thinking, "Who's that?" I felt so lucky when you paid attention to me. I'm like, "Ooh, she likes me."
I do like you. I liked you then, and I like you now. I love you.
Oh, the way we make impressions upon people. Listen, everyone, be well, be happy, be brilliant. There's a little bit of Jersey that lives in all of us, but especially on this show today. Judy, thank you.
You're welcome, sweetie.
All right,
love you.
Bye, y'all. Have a
Bye,
good day.
everybody.